what's going to happen is it's going to send the email newsletter to our email, okay, to our draft folder, where we'll be able to review it. And if we like it, we simply click send and it'll go out to the recipient, and it'll look something like this. Let me give you the overview of today's playbook of what it is that I've put together for the purpose of making your life easier. So for today, we're going to be working on a newsletter and the pieces and components that we're going to be using to put it together. In terms of automation platform, we're going to be using make.com. So for those of you that don't know, make.com is a really nice, simple, easy way to create automations using AI. Pretty user friendly. I would say it's exactly what I was using to really get started and learn, and I think it'll make it easy for you guys as well. As you know on the channel, sometimes I use Make, sometimes I use N8N. It really depends on what I'm doing. But for today, we're going to use make.com. So if you have an account, just log into that. And if you don't, just simply sign up. It's pretty much free, and it'll be a really good way for you to get your feet wet when it comes to this. The next thing that you want to do is you want to go over to rss.app. So if you don't have an account there, go to the website. It's going to look something like this. Simply sign up, make an account, and then what'll happen is it'll take you into a screen like this, or rather you'll go here. Hang on, let me just sign in actually. I don't know why it took me out. Hold on, let me log in. Let's do this. Okay, and so now that I've signed in, I have all these different feeds. So you can create a new one, and in doing so, you're going to pick various sources of news. So you can use articles that come from, for example, news websites. You could use YouTube. You could use social media platforms. You could type in keywords, for example, like this. You could pick specific newsletters, for instance. Doesn't really matter. So I've done that, and as you can see here, I have a lot of different feeds going. And then once you have multiple feeds, you can create what's known as a bundle. So you would just click here, new bundle, and you would check off all the feeds that you want to include in that bundle. So this way, you're not just getting articles from a feed, you're collectively combining a multitude of feeds to sort of create this all-encompassing bundle from all sorts of different news sources, okay? So that's exactly what I did. You're going to want to do the same. Depending on the industry you're in, whatever the use case is. So for example, if you're in real estate, you could do things such as finance, economy, real estate, whatever the key is, whatever the goal is. And you could obviously, use hashtags, keywords. You could use specific websites. Like if I go to mine, for example, just to give you a little bit of insight, here are the feeds that I use. So I'm using Toronto real estate as a keyword. I'm using the Toronto real estate section of the Globe and Mail, finance on the story site, Financial Post, Canada mortgage news, I believe, or Canadian mortgage trends rather, real estate headlines from stories, better dwelling, so on and so forth. So I've actually covered this in previous videos, but just again, as a refresher, this is something you might want to do because it's a fantastic tool to have. So once you've done that, the next thing you need to do, if you haven't done so already, and I've sort of briefly touched on this in previous videos, you want to set up an account with the Google Console, assuming you're using Gmail as your source for email when you're going to be doing this, okay? So it's pretty straightforward. I'll walk you through it. What you want to do is you want to go over to, one second, the Google Cloud Console. Okay, you go here, you would make an account, like you would sign in with your Google account, and then you would go to APIs, and then you would go to library, you would search Gmail, for example, okay? And you would click the Gmail API, like I have it activated, but you would enable it. And once you click into it, you would then go here and it would show you all your various enabled APIs. Okay, so remember, API is that connection that you're making from one thing to another. So this is the connection that we're going to be making with Google. And what you do from there is you go into your Gmail API, which is somewhere here. Okay. And then once you're here, you're going to go to credentials. And again, as always, all the steps, all the keys on how to do this and a very simple way to follow it will be made available through templates, through guides, through anything and everything in the Skool community. So make sure to join, and that way you'll have access to everything. And if you still have questions, I'm always available, so hit me up. So once you're in this credentials section, what you're gonna wanna do is go to create credentials. and you're going to go to OAuth. Okay, this is very important because we're using OAuth to connect with email. And so when you connect with the email, you're going to do this. So it's going to ask you for application type. You're always going to click web application, okay? And then you title it whatever you want. You could just say, I don't know, Gmail times make.com, let's say. And then the key is for the authorized URL. So this I'll also include in the community and in the description. So this way you'll just copy and paste it. I'll show you what it looks like, and it's the same for everybody. So let's just go into an example that I had. Hang on one sec. And obviously I'll blank that out, but this would be the URL for Make. So whenever you're using Make and you want to connect to Gmail because it's got restricted scopes, this is the URL, okay? So all you do is just like we had web client, you name it whatever you want, you add the URL, which is going to be this, okay? And then you click save, and then as you can see here, it gives you client secret and client ID, okay? That's it. So that's how you connect your Gmail. If you have an alternative type of account that you want to use, it's very similar. For that, let me know because it does depend on which platform or service you're using. Personally, I like Gmail, okay? So once you've got that set up and ready to go, what you want to do is you want to tap into something called Perplexity. I've spoken about Perplexity a bunch. I absolutely love it. I find it incredible. I use it for a lot of my research and deep dives when I'm looking when I'm looking for different information and things like that. So to get started there, what you want to do is you want to go to this website, and then let me just show you what it'll look like. So we'll just go here, and you basically continue and you make an account, okay? And it's very cheap. And what it'll do is it's going to act like a research agent, which is going to make our email newsletter that much better, that much more personal, and that much more exciting, okay? And then, of course, the next thing I'm using as part of the automation flow is I'm using ChatGPT, the chat completion, and for the purpose there is it's going to write the email, and it's also going to create the HTML output that we want for the email that it is that we're writing. Now, if you need to make an account, you can go here, okay? I'll include this in all the worksheets and communities that we do for every and each video. And then what you do here is you basically just go, you make an account, set up an API key, and then you connect it to your module on make.com. So this again, by the way, guys, we've done in other videos, but it's very simple. Like when you're here, which by the way, this is what it looks like. All you would simply do is when you go to, create, or rather, let's do it like this. When you go to a module, you go to OpenAI, and you go to create a completion, right? Well, hang on. Let's just say it's going to ask you to make a new connection. And in order to make that new connection, you're going to need an API key. In order to get the API key, you need to go to the website that I just provided you, which is going to be here, okay? And then you're going to be able to get that API key. The next thing that we're going to do for the purpose of creating an image, so I don't want it to be a generic plain Jane sort of email newsletter. I want it to be a little bit more fancy. So this could be a little bit tricky. You don't exactly need to use this for the purpose of images, but if you're looking for very high quality imagery and just an overall incredible platform that will give you access to a variety of other AI sort of platforms, not just image, but other uses as well, you want to go to this website over here. It's called Replicate. So I have an account. Let me show you what it looks like. So once you make an account, now the difference here is you need to have what's known as a GitHub account. So it's a lot easier than it sounds, okay? And again, if we just go back here, what you want to do is you want to start by going to github.com, make an account. It's very straightforward, shouldn't take you more than a minute. Once you have that account, you're going to use that to create and or sign up with Replicate, okay? And once you've signed in with Replicate, first of all, as a separate side note, look how cool this is. These are all different AI sort of platforms and different sort of, some of them are image generators, some of them are just LLMs, and a variety of other uses. So you're gonna, and Kling makes videos from images. So there's There's like a lot of cool stuff here. As you can see, you can generate image, you can generate text, and it gives you access to a variety of different LLMs for the purpose of doing that. You can make videos, you can transcribe, you can caption images, you can upscale images. It's basically a never-ending candy store for AI stuff, okay? So make that account. The reason I'm using it and how we're gonna be using it is because we're gonna be generating an image for the newsletter using it, okay? So that's over here. And then what's going to happen is at the completion of the module, or sorry, of the scenario, so once this run finishes from left all the way to right over here, what's going to happen is it's going to send the email newsletter to our email, okay, to our draft folder, where we'll be able to review it. And if we like it, we simply click send and it'll go out to the recipient. And it'll look something like this, okay? To be exact, I actually have an example right here that I'll bring in. So this is a real example that I sent. So as you can see, created the subject. Well, actually, I already have the subject line in there. It's just specified to the name of the person. And this person, Jordan, so if we actually go to the Google Sheet for a second, Jordan Patel lives in Leslieville based on the location that I have here, and they're a first-time buyer, okay? So when I say personalized, this is going to be made out to somebody that's a first-time buyer that lives in Leslieville. It's going to give information that's relative to that type of individual, okay? So if we read through it super quickly, GTA real estate shakeup, first-time buyer advantage. So boom, right away, this is already speaking to this individual. Anybody else that I'm sending these newsletters to are not going to look like this. They're not going to sound like this. It's going to be specific to them. So I really think that's an undervalued sort of value proposition, because at the end of the day, it's going to catch attention and it's going to feel super personalized, and the person reading it is going to have more interest in doing so because it's not generic and it's for their reason and purpose, okay? So if you've been feeling like the greater Toronto area housing market is an endless game of musical chairs and you're always too slow to grab one, 2025 is shaping up to change your game. Sure, the headlines paint an intimidating picture. Toronto home sales dropping over 25% year on year in early 2025, rocked by economic tremors and powerful trade storms between Canada and the US. Sounds like chaos, doesn't it? Pretty cool. And then I made this image. Now, I don't know. This image is great, but it could be better. And there's other examples, and you can, again, play around with Replicate and tweak it and get it to do things. So yeah, like you could tell the writing style here is fantastic. Like, buyers, your time has come. Condo sellers, get realistic. If you've watched Toronto's condo market, da-da-da-da-da. And by the way, I'm noticing, and I am using GPT 4.5 preview. So this is the newer model that OpenAI has released specifically for writing. And I got to tell you, the writing is pretty good. With some decent prompting, you can output some really good writing that really does feel like somebody with good copywriting skills wrote it. So you could sort of, keep reading it. Softer market means your dollars stretch further, your negotiation leverage amplifies, and your first home purchase isn't fantasy, it's feasible. So just to keep in mind what's happening, and I'll show you in a moment, but just high level, it's taking all the articles that are relevant to our industry, which in this case is real estate, from this last week. It's packaging it, it's analyzing it, it's summarizing it, it's taking into account who we're emailing. So what kind of person are they? Are they a first-time buyer? Are they a downsizer? Like, what is their profile? What area do they live in? What area are they interested in living in? And it's actually creating a newsletter with all those parameters. And that's what makes it so incredibly unique and interesting. So as you can see, even a moment tailored for you, it talks about Canada's trade war with the US and all these other different things. And I'll spare you, but just so you understand, like, this is really powerful. It includes an email signature that I've put there, which I'll show you how to do as well. And here's a call to action. So let's strategize your move, Jordan. No pressure, just insight. And if he clicks it, it'll take him to my calendar in a moment, and he can pick a day to chat. So with that being said, let's go through it. This is what it looks like, okay? So let's walk through this one step at a time. So over here, what we're gonna start with is we're gonna capture all the news from the RSS feed. This module is fairly simple. You simply go to add a module, and then you're gonna click RSS, and then you're gonna go to retrieve RSS feed items. And of course, for those of you that are part of the Skool community, the template is going to be made available to you. All you're going to want to do is simply import the blueprint, as this will be something you could just throw right in, plug and play, and have it and go on your way. Obviously, the only changes you would have to make is some of the connections to some of the accounts, but as a whole, it should be fairly plug and play, okay? So that's the first thing that you're gonna wanna do. The next thing is, when you're in rss.app, at the very top, it gives you, okay, let's do that again. At the very top, it gives you a URL. This URL you wanna copy, and then you just simply wanna paste it right here, okay? And as you scroll down, you simply choose what is the maximum items return. In my case, I use 10. I want 10 articles covering the last 7 days. And that way, I just feel like that's a good amount. It gives us good insight, it gives us a good amount of news. And I think that's perfect. But obviously, if you want a little bit less or more, that's up to you. The next thing I've done here is I've created a filter. And this filter is what gives me the dates going back from a week. So from today, going back a week. So how did I do that? First things first, you filter based on the condition for date created. So it's April 9th. And then what you want to do is copy and paste this formula, okay? This will already be inserted into the template, so you don't have to do it. And if you're just watching and you want to know how to do it, just literally format date, add days, now, -7, this is going back 7 days, and then this over here, and you're good to go. And once you have that, it'll specifically filter to make sure that it fits that criteria, because we're going based on later than or equal. So that's how it works, okay? From there, we're doing an aggregator. So this is going to take all the different outputted articles, because as you can see, we're getting 10. So if I just close these off, you'll notice we're getting 10 bundles. Each bundle represents an article. So if I open one, it's giving us the title, it's giving us the description, it's giving us the summary, it's giving us the URL, and it's giving us the date created and some other stuff as well, like enclosures, which has images and stuff like that. So what we want to do, because we want to actually compile the 10 articles into one shot, we're simply going to aggregate all of them. And I just clicked off the stuff that I wanted, which was title, description, summary, URL, date created, image, enclosures, and date, and that's it. But again, you can tweak it accordingly, and I just did this super quickly for the purpose of demonstration, but it's working pretty well. So once that kicks out, okay, as you can see, it's taken 10 bundles, and it's simply outputted it now into a singular array, which is what I wanted. And then what I've done here is, because I've gone 10 articles, the summary, it's an HTML. So I want to use the summary as something that I'm going to be feeding into the research analysis, or analyzer rather. So this is why I labeled it this way, array 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10 for each and every article. Okay, so what that then does is for each summary, so if I go here, you'll notice the summary, it has HTML that I don't want. Okay, so that's just taking out the HTML and extracting pure plain text. The next thing I'm doing is I've taken all the stuff that I wanted, which is all that data, and essentially I'm gonna then aggregate all that text together. And so the idea behind it is, instead of having singular sort of individual articles, I've just taken everything, and now what it's going to output is a singular line, or a singular, like basic bundle of text. Okay. So as you can see here, it's just simply taken all that text and put it together. Okay. Next thing I've done is in Google Sheets. This just basically searches the rows. So what this does is, and again, I put a limit of 1. You can change this. You can have it run for unlimited amounts. You can have it run for 5. It's entirely up to you. I just want it running 1 at a time. And again, it's for the purpose of simplicity. And the reason that we did this is so that way when I go to here, okay, that way I'm just able to basically, I'm able to map in stuff from Google Maps, which you'll see here. So like for location, right? Like I've mapped it in Leslieville because I have that search module. Client profile over here, which in this case is a first-time buyer. So this, by the way, is a prompt, and it will be included in everything that I put up in the community. And let me just show you what it looks like. So this Perplexity module, I'm using Sonar Pro as usual, and this is going to behave as my research analyst. And so as you can see here, you're a newsletter research analyst responsible for servicing the most relevant, recent, and insight-rich findings based on the provided content. Your output will fuel high-quality newsletter writing. Your goal is to enrich the original material with new data points, fresh angles, and smart contacts. Step one, carefully analyze the article or aggregated content and extract 2 to 3 core themes or high-intent phrases. Step 2, conduct targeted research. Step 3, and so on and so forth. And basically it just tells it exactly what I want and how I want it. So this is no different than, say, hiring somebody and just explaining step by step what you want, how they do it, and how you expect it to look when they're done, okay? So that, as usual, is being done as a system prompt, because the system prompt is what gives it instruction on what to do, how to do it, and how it should output the result, like what it should look like. And then I always add a secondary prompt, which is for user, and this is where I feed it in the actual dynamic data. So from the text aggregator, which has taken everything, I've given it here, so that way it has all the data. So if I scroll down, you'll see snowstorms, tariff talk, reduced traffic, da 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 da. So this basically gives it all the information it needs. And then I give it the client location, and then I give it the client profile. And the reason that I did that is because in addition to the news stories, I wanted to research the location. So in this case, it's Leslieville. What's happening there? What are some recent insights? What are some recent developments? Are there store closures? Are there new businesses popping up? Like, what's local to that community that I can sort of integrate into this newsletter to make it even more personalized? And then on top of that, the client profile in this case is a first-time buyer. So then the question is, okay, what's going on for a first-time buyer? If a first-time buyer was reading this, what's of value, and how do we twist it and speak directly to them? So that's what I've done here, okay? Writing analyst. So this is going to be now responsible for actually writing the raw content of the newsletter. So as I mentioned earlier, guys, again, I'm using GPT 4.5. Now, it's not the cheapest, so you don't necessarily need to use it. And this is something I would not recommend using if you're looking to run this at scale. You can definitely get away with 4.0 or even 4.0 mini, I would say, which would cost less. And if you prompt it, like if you take more time to prompt it, I suspect that you can probably get similar results. I just used it just out of sheer curiosity. I knew it dropped, and I figured that this would be a pretty cool use case to experiment. And yeah, so far, not disappointed. So with this one, I gave it, again, a system prompt, and then of course a user prompt. So in this case, I said, you are Mickey Furman, top-tier razor-sharp realtor at Valerie Real Estate, operating in the ever-shifting, chaotically fascinating world of the Greater Toronto Area. Yes, you don't just sell homes, you interpret the terrain like a wartime correspondent. Jesus. So I had ChatGPT help me prompt this out, but I sort of gave it insight as to what I was looking for and what I wanted to achieve. And honestly, it's pretty good. So as always, the prompt is part of the template. And I'll include it, and then that way you could just tweak it. And if you're just watching this and you're not in the community, why? But if you just want to figure out how to prompt stuff like this, be clear and decisive on what the expectation and the goal is, and then dump that into ChatGPT and, say you're a master prompt engineer, blah, 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 copyright expert, blah, 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 and it'll give you something pretty good. So you could iterate over this a couple times, which I did. And then eventually, after a few attempts, it started giving me the output that I wanted. Okay, so this is the gist of what it looks like. It's very detailed, as you can see. And the more details, the more analysis, the more sort of specifics, the better. Okay, so that's that part. That's the system prompt. And then if you go down, the user prompt looks like this. So again, the user prompt is just basically me feeding it the specific dynamic data. So in this case, we have the result of the analyst, which is over here. So if I go to choices, message, content, so it gives you the insight. And then of course, I'm also including the name of the individual, the profile, location, because I want that intertwined into the actual content of the newsletter as well. here I have a prompt writer. So what I'm doing with this, and I've done this in a previous video, but essentially, so now I'm using GPT-4o Mini, and I've given it the system prompt that it's an expert prompt writer, and this is going to be generating a specific prompt in the format that it needs to be, specifically with the replicate version of the photo generator that I'm using. Okay, so it's all done for me. Again, just copy paste the prompt, and basically it gives it full instruction on how exactly I want it to be, how I want it to look, shapes, size, for example, quality, etc. All this stuff you can edit, you can change, you can tweak, and I encourage you to do so. I'm just using this for the purpose of example, okay? So that's going to create the prompt. This over here is now an HTTP request. This is how you would actually request and get the photo starting to be generated. All this I'll obviously blur out in terms of my key. But so here is the endpoint that you want to be using, okay, for Replicate. And I can give you instructions in the community package that I'll include on how to do this step by step. But all you do is pretty straightforward. Put in the URL, you go to post, you follow the instructions for headers. So for those of you that are familiar with doing API calls, pretty straightforward. Authorization, bearer, space, API key, raw, JSON. And then all I did is I put in the content, and this is the part that saves me a lot of time, is if you notice, I'm using the prompt writer, which is designated to output the JSON, specifically matching the body style for this HTTP request. So I don't have to manually do anything. I just map it in and I'm good to go. So this would set off the request and start getting the image generation going. I put a sleep timer on purpose. It takes about 3 minutes to generate the image. And so I set aside 3 minutes or rather 5 minutes, it looks like, for the purpose of just giving it enough time to generate that image. So that way we don't rush to the next module without the image being ready. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. And then you make a request, which basically gets the actual image. So you just, again, follow this. So you just, instead of post, you do now get, which gets you the URL. So this is going to provide the URL in which where the image that was generated is being housed. So all you do is you copy the, the data that you get here as a result. So data, URLs, and then get. And as you can see, the actual URL website is right there. So that's what you put here. You do get, again, authorization, token, API key, content type, application JSON, raw JSON, that's it. Parse response, yes. That's all you need to do. And then the final one is the easy one. So you just do a simple HTTP get a file. And then because the previous module just simply gave you the output, that's all you do. You just click this because you're just now actually taking and or scraping the image from the URL where it was put for the time being, okay? So I know it sounds complicated. I assure you it's not as complicated as it sounds. It'll become easier with time, and I'm always here to assist you. And so far the community's been growing, and I want to grow it further, and I want to do this live, and I want to do calls, and I want to do this in a very educational way where those of you that aren't sure where to start, not only do you have the confidence to start, but you'll have a helping hand to support you when you do decide to start. So if you haven't, make sure you join, because that's what I'm looking for. And that way, all the stuff that you're seeing, which I know is cool, but just don't know how to start, will be made simple for you, okay? The next thing I have here is a set variable module. All I've done here is, and again, you don't have to do this. So you see here, I wrote author image. So basically so for those of you that are using ChatGPT, the paid version, now the image generation there is insane, okay? Like absolutely insane. And I'm sure you guys have seen it. And so basically, like if we scroll back here for a sec, this image I made there, okay? I put in a couple quick prompts. I took a photo of myself and I made it there. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a really cool image. I kind of want to use that in the newsletter only because it gives it more of like a digital magazine sort of vibe, So this over here is just literally, it's a variable, which means that I can call it something, which in this case is the author image. And I could then put the actual link to the image, which I've saved in my Dropbox, which is what you're seeing. And that way, when I want to map it further into the chain, I don't have to like paste this massive amount of code. It's just going to show up as author image, and it's just a lot cleaner. So that's the concept behind a lot of these tools, okay? Here I'm using another ChatGPT 4.5. And this one's just simply taking what we've done to this point, and it's creating a beautiful, sleek HTML rendering of it. So that way, the email, when it's done, it looks like what you saw at the beginning of the video. And again, a lot of the prompting here was iterated with ChatGPT. Again, it's going to be made available to you. My only recommendation is of what you can do is describe what you want, have an idea of what you want, find examples of what you want. Simply say, like, even take a screenshot and just be like, hey, I'm looking for a newsletter that looks a lot like this. Please provide the HTML code, blah, blah, blah. Put that into ChatGPT, tell it that it's a, a master prompt writer or whatever the case is, and it'll generate something like this. And after a couple back and forth iterations, it'll work really well. And you could do it fast. So that's what I did here, okay? And then of course, as always, the user generated data, the dynamic stuff, so like the body, the added relevant sections, the image, and the author image. And by the way, I included a calendar link for myself, as you saw at the beginning, to have people, use as a call to action to book a meeting with me, because ultimately that's the goal, right? I'm just kind of throwing out a lead magnet, hoping to get this person's attention, hoping for them to look at it, read it, be like, wow, that was pretty valuable. Let me call that guy. I have more questions. He's a person of authority. I trust him. I want to do business with him. So you need some sort of call to action with a link to calendar. In my case, I'm using Calendly. I recommend you do the same. I find it to be pretty good and free for the most part. And so that's the gist, okay? And then the one final thing here. So again, as you see, I've created a variable, email signature, and this is what I wanted to show you guys for those of you that have interest in it and you're looking to create a nice signature. And if you haven't done so or you don't have one as of yet, go to a website called YStamp, okay? And they have, like I have multiple signatures, but hold on, let me see. Okay, so basically they have very easy ways that you can create these, you can edit these. Okay, so see, you just like put your name in, you put the company, you put your title, you put your information, blah, blah, blah. You put images, socials, templates if you want, design, customization, various apps, yada, yada. And then what it lets you do, and what I've done is if I go here and I go to install and I go to HTML, because that's what you want in this case, okay? I literally just copy this by clicking it and I go back here. And when I go to tools here, I just pasted it right here as my email signature. That's it. And then of course I connected my Gmail, and in doing so, I made sure that it's connected to my drafts, okay? I do always like to have a human in the loop when dealing with AI content generation, for the time being at least. This way, if I don't like something, I can edit it, I can change it, or I could scrap it all together. But what's nice about it is it goes in my drafts, it's ready to go, and it's literally just a click from being sent out. So it saves a ton of time. So all you do is you just, you make that connection that I spoke about it earlier. You map in the email address. So in this case, just, I connected it to this mock database. So I literally just mapped in email address, subject. I just kind of like it to be static, meaning I want it to say the same thing. And I don't, I just thought of this. I thought it might be cool, but you can play around and test. You could even create another ChatGPT module sort of, and it'll generate subjects for you based on the content of the email. That's if you really want to go nuts. I didn't care to, but of course, as always, you guys are welcome to try and experiment. All I'm doing is I'm just mapping in the first name, which in this case, the guy's name is Jordan. So it's like, Jordan, here's something worth reading before Sunday winds down. So I was thinking about this as like a, pre-start to the week sort of wrap up or catch up newsletter, but obviously you can change it according to how you want. In the content section, all I did is I put the result of this, which was my newsletter creator, okay? So this is the result right here. And over here, I just popped in the email signature that I showed you a minute ago. And that's it. And then you're on your way. And again, you can even turn this into a PDF if you want and do it as an attachment. And there's a lot of different variances. So I'd love to hear your ideas, your thoughts. And as always, I'm inviting you to join the community where we're going to grow, learn, and tackle all this stuff together. And if you have any questions, please hit me up. Let me know. Would love to help you any which way I can. All the best, guys.